What's cracking, guys? Omar Isov here, back with another video. Hope you're eating your vegetables. We got a special one today, a 2-hour epic, a follow-up now to the original powerlifting roundtable, the Strength Boys roundtable, featuring Alone Thrall, Bruce Crawfish, Johnny Candido the Burrito, and Slinter McKell. We added another member to the all-star lineup. We got Russ Swole in the house because some people said, hey, you five guys, you're not swole. Why should I listen to you? So we decided to fix that problem. Timestamps are linked in the description. Everyone's social media is also linked there. Make sure to check them out. This is a far-ranging conversation. You guys really seem to enjoy the last one, so we thought we'd do a follow-up and talk about even more topics. Without further ado, let's get into this 2-hour video, and keep in mind once again that timestamps are linked in the description. Boys, we made it. We're joined with another guest here today. Another one enters the fold. This is kind of just like your favorite Power Rangers season. It's clearly season 2, where they just keep adding members, and sooner or later we're gonna probably have 12 or 15 members. We now have 5 guys in this chat here talking about strength, something everybody cares about. We do have to address some controversy, and no, I'm not talking about the Halfthor Eddie Hall deadlift, which we will get to. And I'm sure that's topical. By the time it's released, this episode in 2023, no one will care. They both probably will have gassed in their fight, and no one would have landed a single punch. But we did that episode. It was great to bring some OGs of the strength community together to talk about lifting when everyone can't lift. I thought it was just very sensitive on our part. People were very responsive overall, but there were some negative comments. And one of them that they said, I'm just going to read about us. So it's non-specific. It's like non-specific lower back pain. Where they just said, none of you look like, they said,
stupid.
They said, none of you look like you lift. Why are you even talking about lifting? And that's a genuine comment. That's a real comment. I'll see if Severin can throw it up.
That was Russ. Russ comment.
He's trying to get on here, so we had somebody who looked
Russ,
like
we
they
see
lifted.
you. So hopefully we fix that. Because Russ, he is also known as Russ Swole. I mean, the man is swole. So hopefully we increased our clout game. But we can't bring on a new member into the fraternity without a little bit of light hazing. And that is, Russ, I hope you don't take this personally. But I've noticed that you're rocking those crop tops. And it's a bold choice. And I thought in a panel in front of your peers that you could sort of justify this. Is this a quarter life crisis going on here? Is it just the quarantine that's getting to you? Can you give us kind of a rundown of the fashion choice just in front of everyone here quickly before we go on, man?
Me personally, I never looked at it as like a wild thing to do. Like I grew up playing football, so that was kind of like a standard thing that we did. Like whenever we had off-season programs, we just wear crop tops. Like if our shirts weren't cut to crop tops, we would cut it ourselves.
Yeah.
So I never really viewed it. When I put it, like when I did this like a couple of months ago, and people were like, "Oh, what the hell?" I'm just like, I thought this was normal. So I don't know.
That's what I was going to ask. Did you play football? Because that's it's just for something between your shoulders, your skin, and the shoulder pads. You wear a crop top. So yeah.
Exactly.
It's like socks and sandals. If anyone talks shit on socks and sandals, that's so normal. Like, I don't know about football, but like basketball, you have like 20 pairs of sneakers in my backpack, and I'm not going to wear my court shoes outside. And I'm not going to go walk around. No socks and sandals is nasty, really, if we get down to it. I don't want to see your funk. Yeah. Put some socks on, fucking carry your court shoes. They got to stay clean, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, if you want to start...
You wore crop top before or no?
Me? Yeah, no, so that's what I was going to say. I was just joking around. I actually think it's a badass look, and maybe, it's silent jealousy on my part because you, my man, are the only other person that could rock the bandana with any style. So I see when someone else is like creeping up on that game where you're just like bringing something new to the table, I was like, shit, I should have done this before. Okay. You know when you see someone do something, you're like, now I'm a copycat.
Quick comment.
Yeah.
I have a girlfriend, but
yeah.
Where are you going right now, dude? Well, Omar, you looking nice.
No, I will say girls love crop tops. They're like, oh my, like, can you tell my boyfriend to start wearing it? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, So
yeah.
I just say like the dudes that are hating, like
yeah.
girls like it. So
yeah. You've gotten feedback on this. This is vetted information. So all the single gents out there just trying to do bicep curls, increasing their game. That's the secret right there.
Join
sure the internet would be as open to me trying to pull off that look.
Oh no, you could.
I don't think that as a 120 I have the crop top
No, that's
privilege.
Bryce, you could pull off the hoodie crop top.
Oh,
With the sleeves off.
I don't think I want to pull that off.
I do. So that is one fashion choice I do question. Not quite like just the utility where it's like the hoodie. So like you're wearing a hoodie, but then the sleeves are cut off. And so I get it. Like you're keeping your center of your body warm, but like your extremities, like your arms are no longer being kept warm. Everyone does what they want. I will say
T-shirts with a hoodie. That used to be a thing. I never wore one, but it was T-shirt material, but it had a hoodie.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's the lamest look, and then we'll actually start talking about strength, Mike. The lamest, in my opinion, was when people would wear the T-shirt hoodie and then they would wear a suit jacket over. This is like very 2006, where it's like I'm business casual. Like I just felt like jerseying that person every time I saw them. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, I'm out. Not my trend.
So we'll do the quickest of introductions, because normally when people do these things, it takes 30 minutes. It's like, tell me about your accolades. Like, tell me about what this and that. So we have returning. We got Bruce Crawfish in the house, a.k.a. Bryce Krawczyk. As a show of solidarity, we have Johnny Candido, the burrito, who also decided to buzz it down. It's a bold choice. I like it, representing with a USAPL shirt. We got Silent Mike, the silent Holy Spirit, up in the corner, just gazing down on everyone saying, remember me. We got Alone Thrall, everyone's favorite dad on YouTube, in the house representing. Microphone is totally on and working. And then we have Russ Swoll, who does it all. Okay, can rock the bandana, the crop top, is strong, and is jacked. So if we receive one negative comment about our physique, now we know they're a hater. Because before it's like, okay, like
You're right.
yeah, like this bicep, I don't know. But I think I want to go around the panel quickly. And we'll keep it like sub 1 minute, just to be topical, because this will be out tomorrow, which will be May the 13th, an unlucky day. Let's go with it. I just want legit or not, and we have no stake in this whatsoever. And I think I know Johnny's position, and I think I might know Alan's, because I spoke a little bit with both of you about it. The Hafthor deadlift. We're not talking about the fight, because I actually am a huge fan of fights. Like Pride FC is my favorite organization. Shout out to the original one. I think it's great they're doing it. It's a spectacle. They're making like each apparently 7 figures, as Eddie Hall said. So they're making bank. Go ahead and do it. The deadlift. We got a couple USAPL boys. We actually have 3 IPF lads in here. It's like 50-50 between the non-IPF lads and the IPF lads. So I'm just curious in terms of the standards. We'll start with you, Bryce. Do you think that lift should count Hafthors? And I know none of us are strongman, so really only Alan might have the requisite knowledge to pass judgment. But let's shoot the shit. 30 seconds. What do you think?
Sure. Why not? I mean, I feel like everything changes from competition to competition a lot of the times in strongman anyways. Eddie didn't go on to finish the competition that he pulled his 500 in, as far as I know. And I don't think it's that heavily regulated. I understand that it's an advantage on Thor's behalf to be able to do that in his home gym. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. Like Eddie did hit in the UK ? And yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue with it personally.
Yep. Now let's hear the contrary opinion. Johnny, my man, your thoughts.
Now you're like setting me up to have this just big argument against it. I think when it comes down to it, if Brian Shaw has an opinion, he's probably right. And his opinion is against it, especially since he's like the nicest guy in strongman. And basically his position was a mix of Bryce's, with also saying even for strongman, it's pushing the limit. Because there is truly, I mean, if you watch the video did you watch, or on his YouTube channel personally, did you watch the whole video? It really looks like a comfortable warm up, like wait for him. I don't even know if they went with timing without him and controlling it really. So it really did seem like a kind of home field advantage. But obviously in strongman, there are, varying conditions really. But overall, I would say it was a good moment for strongman regardless, because it was on ESPN. So it's like, how much does that really matter? But would I say it's equal to Eddie Hall's in terms of the standard with a huge audience? You have to lift at this certain time. And if you fail, it's embarrassing. Like, I think that feeling, I don't know if you get that in a gym where you just have everybody on your side. I just don't think you do. Yeah. So I think it's different, but it's definitely not anything. If everyone counts it, and if Brian Shaw says, look, that was great, I count it now, I changed my mind, that would just be like, sure.
Yep. Mike?
I don't know. I think I'm a little bit more with Bryce. I just feel like some of it's already so unregulated. Terms like, Alan, correct me if I'm wrong. Is there even a regulated strongman judge? Is there like a process to become a strongman judge, like there is like an IPF judge or a USPA judge?
Not that I know of.
Yeah, and then is there even regulations on what an elephant bar the fuck is? Like, do any of us know?
He wasn't using an elephant bar, was he?
No.
He was using a
Just a deadlift bar.
The deadlift bar.
Oh, that's a little more exciting for me, to be honest. I thought it was an elephant bar. That's kind of cool, I guess. And isn't a lot of the deadlift records broken in an elephant bar or with an elephant bar, like at the Arnold?
They have an elephant bar deadlift world record, but
so now they have two different world records. What the fuck is this sport, Alan?
Yeah.
Do we have a sumo and conventional world record?
A lot of people would argue that we should.
Yeah. I guess to me it's just so many different factors. There's I think he had it's not Sigmundsson judging. What's his name? Alan?
Magnus for Magnuson.
Magnus for Magnuson judging, which is as legit as you could get to me, I guess, in strongman judging, because I guess there is no process, which I kind of guess. So for me, I'm kind of with Bryce. If you want to count it. It's cool. I do agree with Candido. There's obviously different environmental factors that may play into your performance. If it's the third day of a strongman competition and now you have to deadlift after you've already done some stones and you've done yoke and all these other things and you're under fatigue, but also at the end of the day, for me, it's just not that big of a deal. I don't have a horse in the race, so I'm just kind of down with people doing cool things at this point. And I do think it's an overall W for, I think there's 100,000 people on Twitch watching it, like 500,000 on YouTube watching it. I think it's a W for all of us. I think it's a W for fitness. And then sadly, I'm not a big fan of the whole boxing thing. I think that kind of takes half that W away. But I really don't care if it's a record or not, to be honest. Like, I'm not into the controversy. I'm not into, this guy got this and this guy didn't. Whatever, man. It's cool. It's cool, and I'm excited for the next dude to pull 5'10", which will bound to happen.
Yeah. Alan? The resident strongman.
Yeah, I don't honestly, I don't care either way. It's to me, it's like controversy in the NFL. I really like watching football games, but I'm not torn about any sort of controversy either way. It's like, it doesn't affect me at all. And so I kind of feel the same way about this world record. But, to what Johnny said, that if we were to have this committee of professional strongman and we were to take their opinions, I think basically they would say that it's not a legitimate world record, as to what Brian Shaw said. Zydrunas Savickas even said so on a YouTube video. So I would go with what they say. I mean, my opinion on it, I'm not Team Eddie, Team Thor in any aspect at all. But if I was to give one to each, I think that Thor made it look like he didn't even break a sweat, whereas Eddie damn near killed him. But I also think I'm almost positive that Eddie beat the standing world record by like 40 kilos. And so that is monumental to break a world record like that, versus, doing it by 1 kilo. So I guess that would be 1 point, one tally for each teams, but I don't really care either way.
Yeah. Russ, final thoughts?
Man, no, hell no. Fuck, that should have not counted, in my opinion.
Wow.
I'm honestly kind of shocked listening to you guys. Maybe I'm speaking just from a limited perspective since I'm a powerlifter and I don't know much about strongman, but I personally think that, just for starters, like, I'm not Team Thor or Team Eddie. I did love the fact that it was on ESPN. I was shocked that they were able to kind of pull that off. Just for the strength sport community, that is huge. Like, I'm thinking about different possibilities of powerlifting. Like, how could we then parlay, like, maybe like a Raw Nationals or a big USPA meet onto ESPN? Because I think that would be interesting if we're able to get that to happen. But in terms of like strict competition and like competitive, like the competitive parameters, fuck no, that should not count. Like, I'm thinking about the records that, okay, just from my limited perspective, I'm thinking about maybe like my squat record, right? Or my total record. To have that record in competition means something. I don't give a fuck if someone does that in like an Instagram video where they have like a mock meet at their home gym under their like circumstances, right? Because it doesn't count. Like you have to perform that in a competition, looking me eye to eye as like you have that pressurized moment. So in terms of competition, I didn't really care about it. I don't think it should count. I'm surprised that you have like other powerlifters saying it does count or other strongmen saying it counts. I thought it was cool for the sport, but in terms of like actually having a world record, nah.
Wow, Russ is about to just leave this guy. He's like, I thought y'all were legit. I listened to the first one, and I thought it was good.
I'm like, damn, like I honestly like I'm just thinking about it as a competitor.
Yeah.
Like I would not honor anyone's lift that they did outside of competition.
Now,
like I really look at what people do in the gym. I'm just like, I don't care. Like,
yeah.
What have you done like in a meet?
Yeah,
like,
Russ, how much do you think you could squat if you go to Worlds and they just go on your time and they just say like, okay, whatever, you like, control everything.
Look at it from this perspective, right? Let's say that the squat record is currently like 690 or whatever. All right, so I have a plan to break that. I'm gonna just kind of like manipulate all variables to then squat that amount of weight in my gym with my music playing, with my people around, with my hype men. Like it's gonna happen, and I'm gonna smash that world record with ease, and it's gonna look good on camera. But it's a lot different when you're in the competitive environment, when you have the lights on you, when you have a crowd in front of you. When some like people underestimate the value of like having your own music as you're walking up and shit like that. It plays a role, and you have like a time. There's just too many variables that I feel like a competition provides that he just wasn't under. And again, like I'm speaking from a limited perspective. I'm not a strongman. I don't know how that's set.
Actually, I have a question for Alan. Is how do they have the timing in strongman as far as flights? Because with powerlifting, something that actually really negatively affects me is if you have 13 lifters in a flight, I'm the type that I recover within like 6 minutes and I'm ready to squat right away. And I get cold. If I have to wait 16 minutes, I get cold really quick. So in strongman, how do they manage that? Like when Eddie Hall did his 500, how did that go? Did they wait for him or what?
I think Eddie Hall's, so it was a deadlift only, so that was all that he was doing. And so I'm sure that he was, hey, Eddie, let us know, we got about 15 minutes. You're going to be ready. So I'm sure that it was different than a standard strongman competition. But there are rest periods that are, established beforehand. But if someone, if two guys get injured, they're out of the rotation and now you're bumped up. So you gotta pull sooner. And I know for a deadlift event, like a max deadlift event, usually the athletes will have a set number of attempts. So, hey, you've got 3 attempts, 4 attempts, take them whenever you want. And so you can skip a weight and wait a little bit longer. So there's a little bit of strategy that has to be played. But it's different at world levels than amateur levels. But there are events. Let's say the deadlift event was the third event out of 5 events. Normally, your placement in that flight is based off of how you did on the previous event. So on the second event, if I was dead last in that event, I'd be going first on the third event, on the deadlift event. If I was first place on the second event, I would get to go last on the deadlift event. So your performance in the previous event or in the competition, overall standing, does impact what order you'd go in. But I think that, honestly, that Eddie Hall's deadlift event was pretty much like made for Eddie, and just so I don't really know much more beyond that. But
yeah, I don't know details either, but it seems like what Alan just said, like Eddie Hall's deadlift was kind of set up for him to succeed also. And that's the difference between strongman and powerlifting not being regulated. And then my other thought is that like this whole thing, I don't know if it's like a gimmick and Thor's trying to pull one, or like obviously COVID's going on, right? And so he's making the best with what he can do. And by the way he moved that weight, this isn't going to be a discussion in 6 months when he decides to do it again or is going to do it again in another competition. Like he clearly had 504 in him.
I don't know if I agree with that. I think I'm more with not that Russ necessarily agrees with this, but I think you can move a weight in a certain way, and then it never necessarily happens in competition. Where I think there are a lot of lifters where you're like, oh, they definitely have, a certain lift. Yeah. And they think it's just I think it's very possible Thor will never pull more than that in an actual competition. Especially fight stuff.
Yeah, I think anything's possible, but if I'm putting my money down, Thor's could pull over that in 6 months if he wanted to.
To quote Mike T, he says, to paraphrase Mike T, he says, it's always easy until it ain't. because people were
Hafthor.
commenting on his. He'd put like 1 at 9, and they'd be like, "Oh, you definitely had 2 or 3 more. That was so easy." And he always responds, "It's always easy until it's not." So.
Sure. And I don't know Thor's like lifting habits per se. Obviously, he trained to pull this, and he wasn't training for other strongman stuff, which is a big variable in strongman compared to other sports where powerlifters are always training to be good at deadlift. Thor may work on his conditioning a ton the next 3 years and never pull again. I don't know, right? There's way too many variables. But if I would put a lot of money down, if Thor wanted to pull 405 in the next year and focus solely on that, he could probably do it.
Jen.
So I think the thing for me is the weight of it being a record or not in strongman, right? Like to Russ's point, in the IPF, we have open IPF, we have the IPF record database, and I would totally agree that in powerlifting, if somebody breaks something in the gym, like absolutely not. It's totally different out of a gym setting, or out of a meet setting. But I think with strongman, like, is there a unified standard federation? Is there a unified record keeping database? Like, does that like extra tick or signature on there actually legitimize that lift to the point where, okay, this really matters whether or not this was a record or not? Like, he loaded it up, the plates were weighed, he pulled it. Yes, he had a lot in his favor, but I think there was also, like we discussed here, a lot in Eddie's favor that day too. So I don't know. I think that's where I get hung up in whether or not like record, not record, really carries that much.
Yeah, just real quick. I think that to Thor's credit, this I'm not sure where exactly the event was supposed to happen, but this was planned before COVID to have this event where he pulls a world record, and he's been training for it, and it's been advertised. And then kind of last minute, hey, the event's been canceled, and Thor said, hey, I'll still do it. So, I mean, I know that that's kind of wishy-washy, but it wasn't like, fuck it, I'm feeling good.
Right.
I'm going to go for a world record today, and we're going to call it. It was like a huge hyped up event that was canceled. And so, whatever. But I don't know if that means anything, but I guess, people on Team Thor will say, he would have done it in competition. He would have done it in his gym. What does it matter? So, yeah. But I think that, Russ, you make a very good point. And I think maybe it just shows how, for us three, I don't know, maybe it's just not taking that seriously. It's like, yeah, either way, whatever. You know what I mean? Whereas in powerlifting, maybe it would have been taken much more seriously. I don't know.
Yeah, I think my argument goes the other way if it's powerlifting.
Yeah.
If
I think I do too.
If I squat 771, I say, fuck you, Russ, gotcha, bro, and put it on my Instagram, I'm not down with that either. I think it is because of the sport for me and because of the judges and because, again, I don't know how Eddie Hall was treated, but I assume they're pouring him Gatorade in between his fucking lifts and shit. Like everyone, it's all set up a little bit. Strongman started as a spectacle, not a sport, right? Yeah. You grab a football player, you grab a wrestler, right? It's and that's what it's built upon. Now we have these freaks. Powerlifting, although highly unregulated in many senses, is more regulated still.
I was shocked whenever I was like kind of observing the back and forth with the strongman community. I'm like, how? Because once again, I'm an outsider looking in. I'm like, what's the argument? Like, he's doing it in the gym under his circumstances. How is that how does that count? How's that a world record?
So let's give some context then. What I was going to say for those that haven't competed, because Russ, you were very strongly in favor of the concept that obviously when you do it in your own environment, it completely changes the game. And you being a world-class lifter, where you're essentially saying that there's a huge difference between being in a competition and then in a gym setting or a home advantage. And so we see, and I saw kind of Bryce nodding a little bit, Johnny, for those that haven't competed, just to give them kind of some of that context, because I remember, and this is a quick anecdote, that there was someone that came to the gym, and at the time, Jeremy Hamilton, a lifter there, a buddy of mine, had the record of 220, whatever. And this guy came in all full of piss and vinegar, saying he weighed 260, and his gym total, this is no joke. So I think the record was like 2021 or some shit, like it was up there, right? And his gym total at 260 was 1,700, maybe barely. But he came in saying, like, I'm going to smash this man's record. And he'd be training the gym lifts until, no joke, he injured himself. And that's a whole other story. Not surprising. But he treated it like, whatever I'm doing in here, I'm going to be equaling this man. And no one else, like basically he was just kind of the person that no one took seriously, because everyone said essentially what you three are saying, that a gym environment or controlling all these variables versus in a competition. And I can't help but think, and I'll open up the question first to Russ, then I'll go to Bryce and then Johnny, just for your insights on that. Of the 2016 IPF Worlds, where it's Brett Gibbs versus John Hack, And it was just a super high level, and like all the stakes are all the way up. And like, I saw from before, Brett Gibbs squat X amount outside of the gym, outside of competition. And then when it comes down to that moment, there's so many variables that no one even takes into account that can highly affect things. So maybe Russ first, let's just start with you to briefly go over that. Gym lifts versus competition lifts. What are some of these huge variables, man, that can create essentially that variance?
Man, there's like a long list. There's so much. I feel like, I guess one of the number one factors is weight for some people. I know that I train probably like 10 pounds over my weight class. So I'm probably like 193-ish right now. I compete in the 83, so that's 183. So that's 10 pounds down already right there. So that's one big variable. Another one it's not one for me personally, but also just being like in front of people and lifting. Like people kind of underestimate when you walk out there and you just see like a sea of people, and it's just like, oh shit, like you forget all your cues, like maybe you freak out, you get under the weight, and it's maximal effort weight. So one mistake could cost you the lift, right? So a lot of those things play a factor, and I think that a lot of people underestimate that, and they think that their gym list will just translate straight into a competition. There's also competition grade equipment, things of that nature just makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Bryce, thoughts?
Obviously Russ completely right there. I think another big thing that Russ touched on earlier is music. For myself, like that aids my training and my sort of psychology in a huge way. And having to take those headphones off before you go out onto the platform and listen to, I don't know, the IPF has some like really bad royalty-free music that they like to play at World Championships, or like, Disturbed for the 19th time at a local meet maybe. But, those kinds of things play a role. And the fact that you're, depending on your training and whether you're the kind of person that sort of rises to the pressures of competition, or somebody who kind of feels that and needs to try to deal with those, feelings of anxiety and things. Having the judge giving you commands can be a real throw off if you're not prepared. Even if you have prepared for it, going there and having it actually happen and knowing that the white lights and the legitimacy of your lift is contingent on you listening to this referee's commands properly, it adds a whole other level of it. We spoke briefly about flight length. Johnny mentioned earlier, if there's too many lifters in the flight, it takes a long time between attempts. Conversely, especially coming from doing some equipped lifting now, if you have to wrap your knees, put your straps up, put your belt on, and get ready to go hit another equipped squat 5 minutes after your last attempt, it takes you a minute and a half to unwrap your knees. And there's all kinds of things. Like it's just, it's a whole other ball game for sure.
Johnny.
Yeah, I think I agree with all that. And I would say two things is one is I think with sumo, you even see it more as far as you see, especially guys who are max width. This is why I think a lot of guys who are max width, you really need to take into account meet performance, because a lot of guys who are really wide sumos really always have balance issues. And I mean, you'll see some 50 to honestly, I've seen 70-pound gaps between training and meets. And then it just kind of never gets addressed to where it's like, okay, you gotta, even if you were going to lift less consistently, that's a better place to start with. And a lot of that has to do with foot angle and bounce on the platform. But then the second thing I would say is, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding with going 9 for 9 and what that actually means in terms of the odds of each individual lift. Is that if you go, most people think if I have a 60-40 shot, that's good. Like I have more than half. It's like you're almost certainly not going to go 9 for 9. If it's 60-40, 60-40, 60-40, like one of those is going to break the other way. So it's like when you see guys like Russ go 9 for 9. I mean, Russ, how long ago was it that you attempted 8 plates in the gym? That was like a year ago, right? Yeah, a year ago. I remember that. So it's like you attempted 8 plates, and other people would think you attempt 8 plates. Okay, you're probably going to hit plus 10 pounds of that and you got close to lockout in a meet. And it's like you're attempting, like 716, 720s, 730s. And it's like that's realistically what's going to happen in a meet, because you have to actually hit it and know you're going to hit it and know you're going to hit it after the squat. So like dream numbers, you could say, I mean, Russ, especially in the gym or in any situation, you probably squat like 750, go for 770 or something. Those numbers are not just absolutely outlandish. But when you're going in a meet setting, I think the best way to think about it is that if you're going to pull 700 in a meet, you really have to have the top end strength of 720, like realistically, as far as removing everything else, the fatigue, the hype, the body weight. And you just have to play to that. And I think a lot of people perceive that guys who are really clutch are that way because they're confident and because they have a killer instinct, when in reality, they're just realistic. Like they actually had more. They just know not to go for some dream total and go for just, what's logical based on their meet performance and not in the gym previously.
And those are conversations that you have with your coach before a meet. Hey, we can't get our absolute strength out on squat because we need to save a little bit for deadlift. Like, that's a conversation that I have. It's like, okay, we can push for this number, but if you push for this number, just know that this number on deadlift is not going to be there because it's a cumulative effect. Like you have 1, 2, 3 on squat, and then bench 1, 2, 3. By the time you get up to deadlift, it's kind of like your gas. It's funny because I look at my bench session as like a kind of like, okay, we have a break, because like bench is like a midway point for me. I'm just like, all right, I'm gonna relax a little bit. I'm gonna make sure I'm back up and try to get my legs ready for deadlift, legs impact. So people just don't realize that you don't get your best attempt, or you don't get your best quality lift on every single third attempt.
Right.
That's like what you have for that particular lift after you've done 1, 2. So
yeah, what's funny is,
sorry, go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, I was gonna say is that I was actually talking to Taylor Atwood about this at Nationals. I don't think a lot of people know that Taylor Atwood pulled 7 plates before him and I both pulled 7 plates at around a similar time. And what's funny is our meet PRs now from 2014, about 2014, I think he pulled 7 plates. Like 2015, I did, and then in 2020, my PR's 700 flat, and his is like 689. So it's such a good example of like it's just a narrow window to actually get it on the platform. And I believe he actually squatted 600 in the gym in like 2014. And now the 74 kilo squat record, I believe, is still around 611, 620s. So it just goes to show that it's like he's added 250 pounds to his total in that time. But from gym lifts to meet lifts, you could argue, it's just within like 15 pounds. It's just that big of a deal to just convert it into actually happening. Because his meet PR, I think, was like 560 something at that time. So it's just a giant difference over time.
I think the other thing that needs to be taken into account is obviously when you're at a level where you're competing against another lifter, that pressure is going to influence your decisions in terms of what you can take, whether you need to take 100% shot on the squat because you can't afford to lose that 5 kilos because he's going to overtake you on the bench, and then you're going to have to pull for it. And, there's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of trying to judge your opponent's capabilities on a given day. And a lot of the sort of game day lifter versus lifter, sometimes, 3-4 lifters vying for podium positions. And those kinds of things will influence, the likelihood of you taking this crazy reach to some number that you hit once in the gym versus, I know this is 100% shot, so I can put 2.5 extra kilos on my total.
And I think the last thing I'll add from my side is just that carpet shit, man. Like, shout out to my boy Michael, the 74 that was supposed to total like 800 kg. I mean, he bombed out on bench because of the carpet, man. Like, he just couldn't get his feet to be secured down on the carpet. And with his max arch, like, technique or whatever, it just, one little thing, it just fucks the whole bench away. So, I mean, he just couldn't get a grip on the carpet, and it was slippery. Whenever there's chalk on there, you know how that goes, so.
Do we know why they don't use rubber?
Because Alico makes a carpeted platform?
Bro.
Wow. I was going to say, we're setting ourselves up for some controversy here because I heard Alico. We're going to get into it, though. Don't worry, because Alan basically hinted at something we'll be talking about in the future, and that is RPE. Mike Teixeira, who I think has just had such a monumental influence on things with the way people program. I want to briefly chat about, because we just spoke about competition settings, the role of excitement or the role of hype when it comes to lifting, and what variable, what role that plays, because you'll often hear from people, and what's the general cue you'll hear when someone attempts a max effort? They'll say hips if they're squatting for whatever reason, or up, like you get in that gym environment and immediately you go from
I'm trying to squat downward.
Yeah, I think I could squat this amount, and now I could squat this amount. So I'll probably start with Alan. We'll keep it going around this round table here. What is the role or utility of excitement when it comes to lifting, or hype, however we want to phrase it? So, from being 6 a.m., no music, Planet Fitness, lifting groggy, to like having in an ideal scenario where you can control all those variables. What role does hype play for a lifter?
Man, that's a loaded question. I don't really know how to approach it. I think that hype doesn't need to be a huge variable year round in every session. There's often times where I'll go a few weeks, couple of months with like trying not to get super hyped and just like clock in work at the gym. But I do think that hype is certainly important, and I think that everyone displays it differently. Some people are more reserved and very, very focused, and that's kind of the rating of their hype, whereas other people are slapping their face and getting super hyped up, and oftentimes that's the slaps in the face and the slaps on the back and the yells are really artificial just to get yourself hyped up. And I think that it certainly plays a huge role in lifting maximal weight, but it can be detrimental if you're getting too hyped and you're not thinking about what you're doing. You're getting sloppy. You're burying your squats when you're trying to not bury your squats, bar path and whatnot. There's a reason why weightlifters, a bit more of a technical sport, aren't at the same hype level outwardly as a power lifter.
Alan, have you ever seen John North lift?
Yeah, really. Exactly. Slamming bars.
Yeah.
So I think John North's a good example, of doing that artificially, like just to kind of get on the level to take a max attempt, and kind of faking it, just fake it just so that it helps a little bit. But again, I think that everyone's different, and I don't think everyone needs to be outwardly hyped, to the same degree.
Yeah. Now, Mike, I want to ask you, because you rubbed elbows with some of the strongest people in the world on a regular basis. Is hype something that is reserved essentially kind of for your third attempts? Or I think you shared a story of someone, we'll keep them anonymous, that before they attempted like 800 pounds in a gym setting or 900 or whatever, they were whispering to themselves that they were a god amongst men. So I've had
a lot of lifters.
That's a true story,
really
by the way.
Angry, really angry. I'm filming or something. I'm like on the edge of the platform. And there's a lot of dudes yelling some really satanic shit. A handful of them. That really scared me, to be honest. Scared me straight. Found the Lord. I think it's, like Alan said, it's super individual. One funny story, though, about fake hype or whatever, it does piss me off, like fake intensity, although I think Alan's talking about like fake it till you make it. But like John North, I think's lifting and he's screaming out his Chipotle order in a video. He's like screaming, cheese, black beans, rice, guacamole, as he's doing like push press or something. Like that's next level. But I think it's super individual. I think as people approach powerlifting over the last 5, maybe even 10 years and see it more like a sport, like a competition, like other sports, and you just know you can't get hyped every day. In the NBA, you play 82 games a year. Imagine if you're bashing your head through a wall every time you're running out that tunnel. You'll explode. You'll literally explode. There's no chance to make it. And I think powerlifting's similar. I think, I'm no scientist. I don't know about adrenal glands and their lifetime and their half-life or anything like that. But I think if you're bashing your head through a wall for every hard set you have to do in the gym, you probably aren't going to last in powerlifting 5-10 years or what it's going to take to be strong or even healthy if you're not a competitive guy. I learned that early. I trained a lot of conjugate stuff from like 2010 to like 2012 or so, following Westside Book of Methods like it was my Bible. And you lift really fucking heavy twice a week. And so the only thing I know to do to get that fear out of my face of a reverse band, which I don't even know what weight's on the bar anymore, is to get really excited. You're smashing ammonia, your buddies are screaming at you and you pull it. And I did feel like a long-term effect of that. Like it's like more difficult to get fired up after you do that for like 3 years straight. So then I don't know if it's reserved for a third attempt. And I don't know if it's like a secret power or not, but personally, I try to like train a little bit more Zen as much as I can. And then even when I do get fired up, it's a little bit more internal than me, slapping somebody or pushing them around. Obviously, I don't compete that often, so it's for something that either I'm feeling like really bad, like I have a bad day, you pull out, 315 on a bench, you're like, damn, that's feeling a little heavy, and you have a max single that day, I might, go to the reserves and push through a little bit that way. Yeah, I think it's so individual. But I do think it can obviously increase performance like anything else, excitement, adrenaline, music, right? I like to train with no music. I've mocked it in the past too, like listening to crap music or, music that doesn't have any emotional attachment to me. And I kind of pride myself in being able to perform, whether it's podcasts, basketball, powerlifting, kind of under any environment. And I think that's something that's important if you want to grow as a human or grow as an athlete.
Wow. Getting deep now. I was going to say that I think both of you, Alan and Mike, you gave a sufficient answer for my follow-up question to continue around the round table because, there are some individuals, and I will mention the name that Greg Doucette actually said where he did some programming, and he held a record. I forget in the bench press, I believe, and he coached powerlifting athletes. And Alan actually brought up RPE, or Mike Teixeira, and RPE. And I would say, with a show of hands, everyone to some extent here uses RPE in their training here, correct? Right? With just show of hands, yeah, exactly. That he said that essentially RP, and there are some coaches that feel that RP is kind of wishy-washy, and of course we're going to go around, we're going to quantify the utility of it, and then of course the RP, a lot of coaches would say, Mike Teixeira, who I hold in an extremely high regard, the RPE is a great tool for managing fatigue and also trying to assess performance, right, of how you're actually performing. So I asked the question about excitement or hype because there are the people, and it seems like almost the old guard, and I mean no offense when I say this, but I think Mike just brought up Westside, and I'm not insulting Westside in the slightest, but some of the old adages that come from the past are like, oh, let's get hyped or bring the intensity. Like your third attempt is basically not even a coin toss. It's like, I actually don't think I got this, but I'm trying to get in the mood to go ahead and get it. So let me ask everyone around here, and we'll start now because we went Alan, Mike. I'll start with Russ, and then we'll go Bryce, Johnny. The role or utility of RPE, let's say in the context of the average lifter, so not just a competitor, because there's a caveat I should add here, I'm blanking on the actual name of the study and the specific details, but I think they took a look at gen population, their assessment of their own individual RPE, and this is the thing that was cited, that essentially the people overestimate. So they'll call something an 8, and it's really like a 6, right? And so some people use that as leverage to try and say that RPE, and again, for those that are not aware that might be tuning in, rate of perceived exertion, that it doesn't have a place for the average lifter looking to get stronger. That, sure, like, yeah, Bruce Crawfish, you compete at a world-class level, you're very in touch with yourself, you have a world-class coach, Mike Teixeira, it's easy for you to use RPE, like, Johnny Upperbody, who's not Johnny Candido, he's a separate person I'm saying here, and Planet Fitness that's just trying to get after it, like him trying to say, like, is that a 7 or a 6? That's not helping him, because by and large, when we go into an average gym, they need to up the intensity. So the role of RPE, that's the question. Russ, someone, you use it to great effect. You, Joey Flex. So what do you think, man, the role of RPE is for the average lifter looking to get stronger? So you could start all the way from average, all the way up to world-class, man.
I'd say for average lifters, it's just, once again, it's kind of like managing fatigue. I feel like it's kind of tough for the average lifter because they don't know their body as well as like an elite level athlete would. But that's the role of the coach. It's kind of like, hey, you could have pushed it a little bit more. So for the average lifter, it's kind of like the same to me. And if when it gets to the elite athlete, like for myself, it's managing fatigue. Like there's going to be days where I come in, I'm just beat up. And I'll be able to call it a little bit, like maybe something's like RP of 7. I know that I don't have to push as hard as I would have to if there's like a prescribed percentage for that day. So for me, it's not too big of a difference. I think the thing that changes between the average lifter and the elite lifter is the fact that maybe the elite lifter understands the body a little bit more and the average lifter doesn't. But once again, that's when the coach comes in.
Yeah. And you would say, Russ, quickly before I go to Bryce, that it is a process of learning your own RPE and assessing your own performance, right?
Exactly. Like even for myself, like I know when I'm overshooting. I know when I'm undershooting. Like I know what a true RPE 8 looks like for myself. Everyone's a little bit different. Some people are fast lifters. Like some people can lift very, very fast, right? Get to the, they won't have like a sticking point, but if they move up like another 10 pounds and they fail all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So it looks different on everybody. Some people are grinders, some people aren't.
Yeah. Bryce, your thoughts? RPE.
So I've heard a couple of like novel arguments against RPE lately, and one of them was that equipped lifting is too complex. There's too many variables, so why would you want to use RPE? Which to me is absolutely, it doesn't make any sense. You know, the more variables you have, the more you would want something that you could use to regulate your intensity based on those variables on a given day. But I think the big thing is that it essentially provides a system so that the lifter can, like Russ was saying, get to learn their body, right? Learn to understand what intensities feel like. So even if you prescribe by percentage, you know, what's the conversation with your coach, if you have one, or yourself, if you don't, going to look like? You're like, well, I did 76% for 5 today, and it was hard-ish. And then I did 80% for 4, and it was hard-ish-er. And you're like, okay, well, what does any of this mean? How do we turn that into something that we can actually use, reflect on, or try to learn from to develop our training? And, you know, simply by putting a number on it, and however arbitrary that might be from lifter to lifter, how much variance there might be there, I think it still provides a hell of a lot of value in terms of trying to create a sort of language you can use to discuss intensity in terms of how difficult it was, how many reps you had left in the tank, whether you're using, you know, reps in reserve or RPE. I just think it's, you know, it doesn't need to be maybe the governing sort of model of prescribing intensity, but I certainly think including it gives a lot more context to any discussion you might have with yourself or somebody else about your training.
Johnny.
Yeah, I think that there's just so many things that you can do. It's kind of like to what Russ was saying as far as it really being the coach's approach, that it shouldn't. It's one of those weird things where it's like it's almost presenting a problem that anyone who knows what they're doing would know that's not a problem. Because like let's say someone doesn't know how to perceive the RP, exactly like what you said. It's like, okay, then have them do a 10 rep max. Then the next time they do 10 rep max, have it be within 4 weeks. And then if you have a tighter gap between those, you know can be a certain minimum that you can just put as a hard minimum, and then use RPE to work within that range. Like there's no reason that they have to spend 3 months with having no idea where their top end strength is. They can simply more frequently test. And sometimes that is fitting. Like sometimes actually with isolations, I do like kind of the bro way of going to failure of programming for other people. Because especially if you program for someone like tricep extension with a bar, or something like overhead tricep extension, something like that, a lot of times if you put like 3x8 at RP7, just some fluff work, then you say the next week, you say, okay, 3x8 or one set of 8 starting at RP7, but add 10 pounds until a true RP10 and then pyramid down. It's like then you'll find out they just blow it out the water. And then the next time you program 3x8, you just have that context and you can right away use that. But then also something else with RP is the way really I use it is with RPE caps. And that really allows me to have both worlds in a sense, whereas I basically just try to add like, let's say 10 pounds relative to the context of the last cycle with the RPE 8 cap or RPE 7.5 cap. So you could do something like that with someone who has absolutely no clue what to do, is just say, look, if this goes to RPE 9, just rack the weight. And it's something that we intuitively already do, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people will go to actual failure, and then they'll just, I think the sign that you can tell someone's preparing unsuccessfully is when they cut down the reps as opposed to cutting down the weight. And you see that a lot of times with like kind of newer lifters, is instead of doing 4s, they go, you know, it's just so heavy, all I could do was like doubles instead. And instead just RP caps just help you reinforce. It's like, no, you have to hit this at a certain difficulty, like what Bryce said, where maybe it's a little bit more qualitative. You don't have to just go in and hit RP7 flat out. You know, I actually personally rarely do that. I almost do always have that context first, then the RP just kind of limits it. Because the way I look at it too is if you undershoot, the effect usually isn't as bad as long as you're progressively overloading at a rate that's roughly equal to your regular rate of progress. So if you're on pace to add 100 pounds to your squat, which, you know, a lot of beginners kind of can get on that pace, then you're going to be fine as long as you're not overshooting. So you don't have to always guess at exactly that RP8 just with no context.
Johnny hinted at something that will be the next topic, talking about momentum. I'm just curious, though, Mike Allen, is there anything you want to add when we talk about RP before we kind of wrap that one up and continue?
Yeah, I think that RP is bullshit. And
Yeah.
what I would suggest doing is just
Don't
3
watch your
sets of
video on
5
it.
and add 5 pounds every session until you just fail over and over and over. No, I think that RPE, I kind of, especially for just a newer lifter or, general population, I think that RPE can be described as just bumpers to kind of keep you going in the right direction. If someone is, for a month, I had RP 8 programmed, and I look back and I say, oh, you know what? Turns out those were actually RP 7. It's like it doesn't really matter. And I think that over time, a program will naturally allow you to progress. So, this is way general. If I was to say, hey, you're going to do all your work for the next 2 weeks at RP 7, then you're going to do all the work at RP 8, everything else the same. And then RP 9, that's a natural progression that people know. Or if I was to say, do a set of 4 at 7, 4 at 8, 4 at 9, most people would know, okay, that should be a weight increase, So I think that programs will naturally let you progress. And like what Johnny said, if someone's kind of having an issue with judging RP, or if I think they're having an issue, they're undershooting, overshooting, I won't prescribe all their work to be RPE work. So I might say, we're going to work up to a hard set of 4 reps, RP 8 or 9, 1 or 2 in the tank. Okay. And then subtract 10% and just do however many sets of 4, and just do that regardless of how hard it feels. And just, make a note of how difficult the back off sets are. So they're not having to worry about changing the weight. It's just, hey, work up to a hard set. That's your subjective set for the day. And then subtract 5%, subtract 10%, and just do this many, back offs. And I think that helps. So they can kind of jot down their RPE and not have to worry about changing the weight on the bar. So.
Yeah, I'd like to add some real quick too, is that you can also, it's RPE refines percentages, but the inverse is also true, is that I actually had a client with this exact situation before where basically did a 3x3 with a certain weight. And then down the road, like 2 weeks later, he missed a certain lift I thought he for sure hit. And the 3x3 was at RP 6. And I go back and I just calculate the percentage. It was literally 90% of what he missed. It was a 3x3 at RP 6. So it's like, then you go back and you go, okay, that just couldn't have been RP 6. Like, it just wasn't. And you just have to be very blunt about that. Mm-hmm. And I think doing that just keeps everything in check, where you just go, okay, does this actually sound right in terms of the hard? And as long as you keep learning that, and then you're able to adjust, then the next cycle, you don't start with that inflated number on certain slots. I think a lot of it's really specific to just certain slots. And you can't just totally rely on how it feels, without constantly refining that.
Mike?
Yeah, not much. I think it's just another tool in the toolbox. Like I said, it's not always like, I think like 3 years ago, or even now, maybe it's like percentage versus RPE or this versus that. They're just kind of tools. I think it's personal preference on how you use them, how you apply them, either to yourself or your athletes. And then it's a learning curve. I think Russ mentioned earlier, whether people can grind out weights, they can't grind weights, they lift slow, they lift fast, depending on the lift, depending on the athlete. That's all going to come into account. Obviously, it helps a lot when you have a coach, because they can be another eyes to every lift you always have, rather than judging yourself can be difficult. Obviously, we have cameras and stuff, and it works. And then the other piece is that I do think the general population probably just overthinks the whole thing. I like Alan's bumper metaphor. Bro, you make a little bit of progress and you kind of stay in a range, you're probably going to get strong if you have enough time under your hands. Can we optimize things for the elite? Yeah, 100%. Can we adjust things? And I think that's the best part of RPEs. It's probably the most easy to kind of just manipulate and adjust on the fly, obviously, is what its purpose was. But not only short term, but long term as well.
Yeah. I think what Johnny said basically about the false argument that RPE, that it's not exactly like someone's calling out a 7, well, it might actually be an 8, as if people don't realize that there can be some variability. I just want to quickly give the analogy that Mike Teixeira gave on Iron Culture. That was probably the most existential analogy I've ever heard, where he said periodization in general and the things that we're doing with the biopsychosocial model of how we operate, where there's so many variables. It's like being in the dark in a cave, and the objects around the cave are constantly moving. So the rocks, the things that are in your way are constantly moving. Those are all the variables that you have to contend with. And you have a map. Your map is essentially the program that you've been given, or the plan that you have. And you don't know if this plan will get you out of the cave. It's very dark also in the cave. You can't see. And things are constantly moving. I'm like, Mike, you're blowing my mind here with how existential you're going. But it's
Mike,
true.
you good?
And then he's like, oh, I'm great. Send me to that cave. And then your pen light is basically the feedback you give. And so RPE is one of those feedback tools. It's not saying necessarily that this pen light that's flickering, I think he even said it's flickering. I'm like, dude, this guy, like, he's thinking some dark shit. But the point is that RPE is, as kind of Mike said, a tool to let you know a metric where you're trying to have some sort of judgment of how you're progressing. You don't know, once again, ultimately the greater plan, so in the context of the programming or the periodization, if it'll lead you to the goal, but it is a feedback tool. And those things are very important, especially if you're dealing with a coach or you're trying to assess your performance in any meaningful way. So I think we answered that. So Johnny, if we spoke about, kind of RP, its utility, and we spoke about the role of excitement and hype kind of with lifters and how there's a lot of variability, once again, when it comes to performance, I want to talk a little bit about momentum. I think that's a little bit of an underrated aspect. And when I define momentum, I mean a lifter's ability to accumulate a lot of good training blocks that will yield a large return in performance. And what I mean is that I think all of us probably right here, the 6 of us, have experienced that at some point in our intermediate or beyond career. So we're not talking about a beginner here that was like, oh, I just touched a barbell, and the first time I did a deadlift, I did a plate, and now a year later, I'm deadlifting 3 plates. I'm talking about individuals, all of us right here, that probably were lifting for a long period of time. So, you're probably deadlifting 500 or 600 or whatever the case may be. I know, Johnny, it was great, like I said before in the last episode, man, to see you kind of hit all those numbers, like your recent me just slamming PRs, bro, coming back from everything. And so I think there's kind of this artificial assumption that you must be essentially a genetic outlier to continue to progress. And we've seen, and I gave a shout out to Tim Thibodeau, where he kind of has just had this consistent performance. He's one of those lifters, right, where we saw a consistent performance. But momentum, establishing this momentum seems very important. And some lifters never seem able to have that takeoff trajectory where they'll achieve that intermediate status. So they'll kind of, as you said, not Taylor Atwood's a phenomenal lifter, but they'll achieve a certain amount, right? So they'll achieve an amount and they never quite can take it to the next level. Can you talk, Johnny, a little bit about the role of momentum, or how one begins to try and develop that so they can continue gaining strength over time?
Yeah, I'd say I think the biggest thing is, it's kind of similar to what's going to happen with the chrono stuff, is that when you start at a low point, sometimes it really can help because you kind of clear expectations. You're able to then just accurately judge things without kind of having this stress that every light day has to be constantly progressing. Maybe you can squat 405 on your light day and you don't have to squat, 495 every single light day or whatever it may be. But I think the main thing that I look at is, what is the negative cost of undershooting if you're equal or better than your yearly rate of progress? So like, let's say 60 pounds to my squat in a year would be like the top end, where it's like, obviously I don't need more than that, like no matter what, in my opinion. Then you go, so if I'm at that pace and I undershoot it, is there really any negative? And in my opinion, there is none. Like, I don't think you're going to actually lose muscle mass because you didn't activate enough while you're adding weight. Like that's not a real concern. So I think that there are certain moments like that where you go, if the cost of undershooting is less than the cost of overshooting, I think then there are certain situations where you should bias it towards that if you're going to make a mistake. And nobody's perfect, so you have to count on the fact that you are going to make a mistake. So make it slightly in that direction. And I think that's what you see with a lot of lifters who've been in it for forever, like Dave Ricks and a lot of those older guys. It's some of those guys rebuild momentum. You see some of those, like I think Dave Ricks in the past year has done better than he did 3 years ago, and he's like 61 or something. So it's like you can see a lot of people rebuild momentum, but I think the key is that, honestly, for people watching this, is that you can't let social media ruin your training if you're going to do that. Because like when I built that momentum, I remember it was when I totaled 1521 on my second meet coming back. I remember from 1521 to 1609, I remember just thinking like, I'm training super hard. And I remember just giving myself crap, like, I'm training super hard. I don't know where this is going, but I feel like I've never trained this hard in my life. Because I was benching 6 days a week, squatting 3 days a week, like 2 sessions were 4.5 hours a week. And I remember just not really knowing, because I was so in the pocket, as Joey Flex would say, as far as like the singles and all that. And I think really, to people watching, is the social media thing. Because if you're really going to push for a PR and kind of cash out a little bit early, relatively frequently, and if you even let that be a motive, then it's always going to slightly skew that way. And to really build momentum, you might have to go a whole cycle where then it ends with a PR that looks kind of smooth, and people are like, like when I squat 595, people are like, oh, why don't you just go for 600? It's like, well, then at the Arnold I squatted 601. So if I squatted 600, which maybe I could have in the gym, then I would have thought mentally I have to squat 606. Might miss that, and if I miss that, end with like 579 on the squat, 20 pounds less than last meet, or 10 pounds less, then it just completely changes the whole perspective, really. So I think it's the willingness to leave some in the tank and not let it just constantly skew towards the clout, which honestly is tough. Like, there have been times in my training now where I'm just like, if I had to email someone what to do, I know what I would say to do, and I just have to follow that, regardless of the video situation. And that's actually why I think what Russ is doing is really never been done before, as far as the top lifter documenting and being active during that run, because it's so hard. I honestly think very few people can relate to that.
Yeah. Russ, sorry, I was going to... Yeah, Russ, I want to hear your opinion, man. Just because at a world-class level, entering the gym even now, like trying to accumulate momentum where, setting records left and right, how do you keep that, or how did you establish your momentum over the last few years, and how do you even try and maintain it or elevate it?
It's literally always been the same for me. It's funny because, like, momentum comes in, like, sometimes I have momentum, sometimes I don't. Like, when you set a certain standard for yourself strength-wise, anything you do in the gym is just not as, in terms of, like, okay, let's say your squat PR 700 pounds. For the most part, you're going to come inside the gym, you're going to hit like 660, 650 on most days. So what I try to obsess, or what I try to take with momentum, is like, I need to obsess over the things I control. And the things that I control basically is just the fact that I'm going to the gym and I'm executing technique. And I'm very, very obsessive about those two things. If I'm able to execute those two things, then strength will come here and there, and I'll take advantage when it does. But for the most part, I think that building momentum with things that you can control is the easiest way to build momentum, in my opinion, because strength, once again, like I said earlier, it's going to come and go. But if you're able to be obsessive and control the variables, then you'll be like, okay, well, like, I've literally had 5 days in a row where I've been able to come inside the gym. And that's like, it's such like for us that, we do lifting for a living for the most part. I would say that that's kind of like a thing that we take for granted. And it's like, oh, I was able to train for 5 days in a row. That's what I do all the time. But for me, I obsess over that. So it's like, okay, I've trained for 5 days in a row. I feel like I have momentum. Like, I find my groove. So that's how, for me, that's how I've built momentum over the last couple of years. Like, I just feel like I take advantage of the things that I can't control, and I obsess over them. So it makes it a lot easier for me to hit a rhythm. And you just have to change your expectations. I feel like before, like, as a younger lifter, momentum to me was just being strong. Like, so I have but like that probably 1 week out of like 2 months, right? And you'll see me post like, oh, I just hit this PR, blah, blah, blah. But you lose momentum doing that type of shit. You lose momentum fast. So a more consistent way to build that is obsessing over the things that you can't control.
Bryce, your thoughts?
I think Johnny and Russ like set this up really, really well, and I'd agree with what they're saying. I think a lot of building momentum for me and for the athletes I coach comes down to a pretty like detailed goal setting process of understanding, okay, by these points we want to be at these milestones, therefore our rate of progress can be this, and like Johnny said, a lot of the times that allows us to undershoot for a couple of weeks at the beginning of the block, right? Like things are an easy 8, things are a little bit easier than they should be, and you add that 7.5 kilos and the bar speed doesn't change from week to week, and you think to yourself, holy shit, okay, we're getting stronger. And that buy-in goes into this sort of positive feedback loop of creating further and further progress and feeling positive about your training, and that sort of like psychological feeling of momentum. And I think breaking that down, again, to go back to Russ here, those process goals of getting to the gym, doing things right, putting the right weight on the bar, obsessing over technique, thinking about eating, nutrition, consistency, those things that you can control are huge. And that's how you build from those process goals of sort of day to day, this is what we need to check off, into, okay, performance goals. Yes, we're hitting these milestones in training, to outcome goals where you're now, breaking records and getting medals and those kinds of things. I was kind of sitting here thinking about two different, I guess, analogies, and one would be, trying to catch a wave surfing, and I've done this maybe once in my life, and I'm terrible at it. So thank God I can do it better with powerlifting. But it's really, really hard to get your board going at the same speed as the wave. It's really hard to sort of have enough momentum so that you don't get out in front of the wave and then get hit by it, but not so much that the wave just passes you by. And I think that's kind of a way of thinking about, okay, where we need to be in terms of stimulus, in terms of jumps week to week, in terms of, what RPE we have on a given session, or how long this lifter can handle being in sort of a developmental block, if you want to use that terminology. And the other one would be kind of like thinking about it like a slingshot. So you have to kind of pull it back and give it some room to build up the momentum before releasing it and expecting it to go really far. So a lot of times, again, I'm going to agree very vehemently with what Russ and Johnny said here, but pulling back that slingshot, giving yourself a little bit of room to build up some steam and some momentum and to get things snowballing, a lot of the times is the big trick. And that's why I see it often. People get a little nick, injury, tweak, twinge, whatever. They dial things back for a bit, slowly ramp back up, and all of a sudden they're able to progress past where they were pre-injury. And that little bit of recovery, that little bit of undershooting or sort of, just approaching it differently, I think, a lot of the times, in terms of allowing yourself to do a little bit less before you do more. But smart progression, lots of that kind of stuff plays part.
Yeah, man. Mike, let's talk now in the context of general population, or when we talk about momentum, reestablish it, because maybe there's some people listening right now thinking like, dog, I haven't had access to a gym for 2 months, and here you guys are talking about, like Russ is talking about, you know how we do, like when we come in, we're going to squat, 650 when we come into the gym. They're like, I haven't been in the gym for months. I'm dreaming about it. I actually responded to someone that sent me a DM, and I found, and I don't know if you gents would agree, the ultra specificity boys that don't have access to gym equipment, let's just say they can't afford a home gym or whatnot, are languishing right now. Where this guy told me, like, he has just his motivation is sapped. He's working his way up. He kind of bought all the way into powerlifting, and he was making his way towards 500 pounds. He was doing, successful blocks, and he was like at 480 or something like that. And he was gearing up, and now, like, he has no access to anything. He's like, man, my motivation has waned. He's gained 15 pounds over the last 2 months. And I was like, oh man. So I think that's multi-faceted kind of a question to tackle. But Mike, for someone that is looking to reestablish some momentum now, so let's assume that we're in one of the down periods for a lot of people, and I'm thinking about your recent return. What are some things? And then Alan, too, being kind of a gym owner, I'm going to ask you also kind of a similar question.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best to answer it. Shout out to Bryce Lewis is in chat right now, and he said some people are talking about like a physiological momentum, and some are talking about like more of a mental, psychological momentum. And obviously they both play a role in terms of like programming and lifting. I think Bryce hit it, Mr. Krawcheck, Bryce, hit it on the head with, whatever term you want to use, submaximal training. You're not RPE 10 bashing your head through a wall. You're kind of playing one step behind, taking one step back to go 2 steps forward, whatever it might be. That's kind of a programming general model or philosophy I followed for a very long time. Going back to shout out to Jeremy Hamilton, who I worked with, I don't know, maybe 2014 or something for a couple of years. And I think that helps a lot of people with the physical aspect. The mental aspect is more what I think Russ was talking about. And I agree with him 100%. I think it's, managing your expectations, which goes to goal setting, goes to being realistic. Obviously controlling variables. A question, I bet all of us, obviously, but if we had nickels for how many times people said, Mike, you've been training, how hard is this right now? Like, over these last couple of weeks. Yeah. Also, and the truth is, like, I haven't been training. That's my answer to people. Like, oh, bro, are you freaking out? Like, I'm not my happiest, but I'm not freaking out. The gym will be there. Life will be there. Life goes on. There's multiple aspects of life that I enjoy. I'm not as creative as Alan, or motivated, if you want to call it. So no, I haven't like fucked around in my garage. Alan's insanely resourceful, and he loves training. He loves training, and for me, training is just kind of part of what I do. And I've been riding my bike and get some cardio in, but I don't need this stuff where so many people do, and I get it. But for me personally, building momentum in both senses is as simple as showing up and do your job. My high school basketball coach used to just say, "Do your job. Do your job. If you're the rebounder, you're gonna go rebound. If you're the scorer, you're gonna shoot buckets. Shoot or shoot. Do your job." And so for me, it's just showing up. Like Russ said, I can't echo enough. Like, man, I went to the gym 5 days this week. That was written for me. That's what I was supposed to do, and I got it done. Were they all the best sessions in the world? Did I crush PRs? Did I feel awesome? Was it super fun? Did I get a new girlfriend because I wore that crop top? No. But I showed up 5 times, and I got the work done. So for me, it's about building habits, managing expectations, whether you call them superstitions. I know me and Omar talk about that today on this stream, but we've also talked about it in the past. Just, how you tie your shoes, what hats I like to wear, little things I do, controlling the variables. I lay out my clothes every day. I've done that since I was a little kid. I would lay out my outfit for school and I lay out my outfit for basketball, and they all match. And that's just how you do it. And even now, I'm like, well, I'm going to Untamed today, and I lay out my outfit that I'm going to Untamed. Like, maybe Alan will think I look cool. I don't know, but I like to feel good, and you do that. So whether I show up and every squat rack's taken, I'm not going to just let that, shit on my whole day. I'll go hop on the assault bike or whatever. So just showing up's the main part for me. And momentum will come and go. There are, again, programming things and probably some sports psych things you can do to manipulate those, that you get more momentum rather than always kind of being on a downslope. But generally speaking, I think it's a natural thing. So if you just show up, it'll handle that part on its own.
Yeah. I almost think of what's the Deion Sanders quote where you just said that? It's like this: look good, feel good, play good, pay good. And then I forget the pay good, live good, that good, essentially, where I do think there are so many factors, and there are so many it really is a spectrum for lifters, right? Like, kind of what motivates them, or like there are people where you're assigned something, you think of kind of like the black or white input output machine, where it's okay, yep, I'll do that. And then there are some people where anxiety plays a huge role, kind of the fears, the things, all these things that come into play, that then it's not just a session, you know what I mean, for them.
Yeah. And I think that's why you have that superstition, or you have that routine, or you have that, okay, well, all this, I got a bent bar and all these things, my anxiety, my girlfriend, my gym crush is over here watching me squat 4 plates like a pansy, but at least I look good. Yeah. I got my shoes on. I took my pre-workout. Bro. It really is. It really is. And it sounds so dumb, but that's how I do everything. Like, I laid out this shirt and these clothes to do the stupid podcast with you bums. Like, I just set it all up.
Russ, what are you gonna say?
How important is it for y'all to look look good in the gym for yourself? Like, is that a thing? Or
yeah, I think it's just culture for me. Like, growing up in basketball and whatever, you just dress that way. And I don't know if it's to look good for me or look good for somebody else, but I think it's just it feels good having your. I almost wore my Jordans. I don't really wear shoes in the house, but I wanted to flex on Russ, but I didn't. I'm shoeless right now, but I almost did. But yeah, that's everything to me. And maybe to someone else, it's something different. Maybe it's to have their pre-workout sandwich. Or maybe for someone else is to listen to a certain song, or whatever it might be. It could be tiny or it could be big. But I think it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it starts when I leave the crib. Like, I gotta make sure that, like, if I literally, like, it sounds so like super superficial or whatever, but like, I'll literally look in the mirror. I'm like, nah, this ain't it. Like, I literally can't visualize myself lifting in this shit right now. I gotta go change. And I've done that multiple times. And like, it's a big factor for me to really fuck with what I'm wearing. And then, like, for some reason, it helps me visualize myself lifting the weight in a fit that I think is cool. That makes sense. Like, that's just me. But I was just curious if, like, any of you guys, like, kind of do that.
Yeah, 100%.
I generally use the sniff test. And, if it's good to go, it's good to go. No, I get it though, man. Like, I cover my body with tattoos. I mean, obviously I care about my aesthetics. So, I don't know if that carries over to me, like, planning my clothes all that much, but I definitely think there's something to, like, I get a haircut before a big comp. I do stuff like that. So I definitely get where you're coming from, for sure.
Yeah, I think sometimes some powerlifters can be a little bit too self-conscious where they'll pretend like, I don't care about what I lift. I'm like, sure. It's like, you're not going onto the platform or the t-shirt. It's not like a tattered t-shirt that you're wearing or this and that, you know? I do think there is something about our self-evaluation, or even, Russ, you said, the visualization where we all probably picture ourselves successfully lifting weights in our head. It's like, how do I look when I do that? Like, how do I see myself? And you kind of want that reality, or what you see, you want to bring it to reality. Alan, let me ask you, man, because I don't know if it's one or the other, the chicken or the egg, which came first, the omelet. But for you, we're strongman as an example. Just that was part of the appeal where we had you and Joey Zatmary on Iron Culture talking about like kind of at competitions. Yeah, are these calibrated plates? Probably not, man. Like, what's this bar? I don't know how much it weighs. Like, I train with a 100-pound log. Like, now I'm training with a 120. It's like, you see, my man, like you're thriving in this moment right now, where you're at home, you're just coming up, and you're doing like the what is it? Not the Anderson squat, but like you have like the big tires and stuff. And I think also just, it's part of your attitude, what you've cultivated for yourself, where you have a resilience, certainly, to your character. So for those people, Alan, that now we spoke about momentum in the context of training, high-level training amongst some very high-level athletes, and then we kind of brought it back down with my kind of general population. For those people, because I think there is a reason why, like YouTube, I've noticed fitness content, by and large, is being less consumed because people are thinking about it less, but also there's just overall anxiety. Like there are a lot of people that, I'll just use it in quotations, are stuck. It's not just the powerlifting community. I would say like the aesthetic boys too, was like, well, wait a second, I can't do like, my low to high cable flies. Like, I could just do push-ups. Like, why am I even doing this? And so there's kind of this nihilism setting in. For people that want to establish momentum or basically get out of this rut, what would you say?
You're talking about when gyms reopen and things are back to normal, or right now without the gym?
So let's talk right now, because this is 2 months in, man. And I literally see people because they send the DM.
We're 2 months in, man.
We're 2 months. It's fine. Someone said something that made me laugh out loud. I don't mean this in a cruel way, but it's like, when we all get through this, I'm like, if this is like the worst thing you've dealt with in your life, like I'm not trying to be cruel when I say that, but there are people that have dealt with a lot more. But he kind of just looked at me. He's like, when we all get through this, I'm like, like, we're fine. So Alan, let's say right now, man, because there's people, when this goes live, it's been about 8-9 weeks. There are probably, I would estimate, less than half, but still a large portion of people that are now not really in any sort of training zone.
I think that in order to build momentum, I'm going to roll with what Mike was saying, that I think the most important thing right now is just to maintain a routine and just make that the top of your priority list. I'm going to train whatever 3 to 4 times this week in whatever capacity you have to train. And that's my goal. That's what I want to do. So you're not worried about numbers. You don't have, these, I have to go to the gym and hit 495 today. It better be easy, blah, blah, blah. Just getting into a routine and, maintaining discipline to adhere to that. And like I talked about in the last video that we spoke, I don't have any secrets to gaining momentum or to getting anyone to adhere to a program. I do think that it's easier for people who really enjoy training, and it's not hard for me to find motivation to go into the garage or train somewhere, because I really do enjoy training, and some people just don't. And honestly, for a lot of people, going to the gym and training is not easy. It doesn't come as easy as it does to Russ to go in and just be good, or anyone on this podcast, to be good at something. And that's easy to continue doing if you go into the gym and you're naturally pretty good at it. But for people who are not good at going to the gym or lifting weights, it's hard to keep to that. And so I don't have a great answer as to, this is what you need to do in order to keep momentum. But if I was working with a client, I think just sticking to a schedule is the most important thing right now. And then everything else will be, addressed later.
I love it. There are so many ways we can go with this episode. I am aware of the fact that we probably only have about another 20-ish minutes, so we're going to shoehorn 2 topics. I'm going to leap forward a little bit, and I'm going to shoot it back to my man Johnny, because I actually want to talk about the role of aesthetics, and that is why we got Russ on. So we're right now, the trolls, we're holding them at bay. But I think I want to have a nuanced conversation as it relates to strength and hypertrophy, because depending upon which strength coach you'll talk to, strength will automatically, there's a direct arrow going towards hypertrophy. If you train for strength, you get stronger, you develop some of that momentum, you go up 100 pounds on your squat, guess what? You're going to add quads. And I think it is more nuanced than that, because I think there's a lot of different ways to get stronger. And I think that depending upon the volume, if you stick more to, let's say, in quotations, a Bulgarian style where you're working up to top singles and you're not doing a ton of accessory work, versus someone that's doing more volume to achieve the same strength, I think the physique would look different. And I was talking with Johnny privately about just like I remember the 2012 physique, the athletic physique where you're sprinting to, you and your brother, at the university, because we were kind of talking the similar thing, athletic aesthetic, and my boy was doing biceps and all those things. Like your peak, would you say, Johnny, quickly before I go on, that your peak aesthetics is different than in this point in time than your peak strength level? Like if you were to try and define like where you look your best and where you're strongest, are they the exact same, like where you look your best and you're your strongest, or were they kind of two different periods?
I'd say it's mostly honestly, it's mostly time.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it always connects back to. That's what's funny is that it's like you look back. Actually, by the way, I have started doing curls again since I have the home gym set up. So it's curls and lateral raises. I can just go nuts on.
Yep.
But the thing that I think a lot of misunderstanding comes from is that there were these debates. It was kind of in that era where there were like Blaha in Sebastian Fitness and Blaha debates. That's throwing it way back.
Yeah. Oh, Sunni Sebastian. No, Johnny, that's what I love, bro. It's like only you and I could throw these like weird ass references from like 9 years ago, and we get it because we've been on the scene. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and there were like debates about like hamstring curls and whether that is meaningful versus deadlifts, and then. And one side was just the deadlift and one side was the hamstring curl. It's like, it's so obvious that if you have time, just do both. Like, who cares? Like, just literally just do it.
Yeah.
And then see if it's worth keeping in. And the thing is I think a lot of those discussions, if usually those isolations, first of all, don't really detract from recovery that much. Yeah. So it's usually very easy to do. And so I really would say it comes down to time. And you typically see that with guys, depending on their bench style. If you bench with the max grip width, typically those guys bench 4 times or more a week after a certain level of experience. So a guy like that, it's like, if you're going to bench 4 to 6 days a week, just how much time do you have to do curls? Like, that's really what it comes down to. And if you do have the time, honestly, if you have the time, you can do all of it. Like, it really is that simple, in my opinion. Because in general, actually, I think Greg Knuckles recently posted, I think it was in Mass, where he posted about how fat-free mass index is pretty directly correlated with powerlifting success in the big picture. So it still is constantly hypertrophy work, is powerlifting preparation. And I actually think that that's one of the reasons why periodization kind of has broken down, because you can't prepare for a meet not focusing on hypertrophy really the entire time, except for maybe the last taper at the very last moment. But otherwise, it's like you really should be trying to build muscle in the prime movers as long as you can. And I think that's why we see just across the board is a way later taper and a way more subtle taper versus back in the day. Back in the day, it was more clear. It's like, okay, I'm going to work on hypertrophy now. My performance can go down. Then I'm going to peak. And there's like the kind of, you still see people talk about it. And I'm not gonna say names, but you see some people talk about who are educated, who are very smart. But it's like you get it. They're educated. They're not wrong technically, but it's just not really the picture of what's happening. And I think that's what you see a lot, because across the board, I mean, you see pretty much everybody building a ton of muscle on quads, glutes, hamstrings, and the lifts that they don't. It's like, well, my upper body's not particularly big. I'm not a particularly good bencher. Like, it kind of makes sense. And I think people point to maybe the Max Tunings of the world, but even he has like jacked lumbar erectors, and he has more of a deadlift style that has more rounded style. Not to say that's negative or anything. Yeah. And it just makes sense. Like I think that's partially why I have really big hamstrings, because I pull such a flat back that I have probably greater hip extension range of motion than someone who pulls really rounded. So a lot of it does make sense. It's just, I think people just see pictures and then they just they don't really add it up. And if you look at the top 83s now, because it's not just Russ, it's Gruden. I don't think, have you guys seen Gruden? John Gruden's son? Yeah, Deuce Gruden. He is extremely jacked.
Jacked out of his mind.
Yeah, Omar, do you know?
I actually don't. I was thinking of Noriega when you were saying other 83s that are jacked.
I'm ready to Oklahoma.
Oh, there are guys. Yeah, there are guys.
Jacked.
Yeah, there because I would say probably the three most jacked would be like Russ, Gruden, and Jamar. Would you agree with that, Russ? That's about.
Yeah.
And like those, it really is like. I think as the sport elevates, that's definitely becoming norm. It kind of connects to the body weight thing that Russ talked about. Is I think we will see people fill out the class, cut down more, and I even think performance-wise is we'll see more of it kind of similar to weightlifting, where in the off season the percentage they lift might be 103%, and then you cut down for a meet, and then you lift at around 100% of a meet max, and things are just being pushed more to that edge. You can't just go lifting 70% with clear face, delineation, and then perfectly plan it and have no issues go wrong. I think we're seeing people push it to the edge more year round, and really you have to be jacked to be at that top level at this point.
Yeah,
you have to find that also. Like if you're a lifter that's coming down from weight, not coming down, but if you have to cut, I try to push the limit at how heavy can I be during the off season to still maintain that strength whenever I do cut down. I feel like we've all kind of know of lifters that they train at a certain way, and whenever it's time to compete and they drop down to a weight class, their performance significantly drops.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Now, Russ, let me ask you, because I want to continue this aesthetic conversation. And then, Bryce, I want to talk about you and you gaining some body weight, my man, and the bench is blowing up. But, Russ, for you, someone that is interested in bodybuilding, and so he could do both. For your training now, powerlifting, do you see any large changes towards what you do differently? Let's say if you wanted to focus only on hypertrophy, or do you see very complementary your overall approach where it's a perfect kind of power building, the two things come together? Or let's say if you wanted to be max out on your bodybuilding potential, would your training change significantly than what it is right now, focusing more maybe on strength?
Yeah. So if I were to just like drop powerlifting and move over to bodybuilding, I think that my training would probably change a little bit. There just wouldn't be the need to go like do heavy singles on squat. It would just be a waste of effort. Might as well just go straight to the hypertrophy stuff. But what was the parameter of the question? I literally just blanked.
Yeah, no worries, man. I was going to say, so let's say you're training overall right now, you're training a little bit more for strength. We were having the conversation where it seems that some strength coaches think that, strength training, and how do we define that? Higher intensities, more singles, is all basic you need in order to build muscle, and one and two are the same. So I'm asking for you, do you think there is a difference between, let's say, hypertrophy training, if you wanted to maximize your genetic muscular potential, and what you're doing right now that's kind of like, strength-based, but also has some hypertrophy?
Yeah. So okay, now I remember like the full scope of everything. But I think if I switched over to bodybuilding, my training would look a little bit different. I know that Joey doesn't have an issue with me doing bodybuilding. He encourages it, but he always kind of hints and says like, yo, if we just like focus, because there's a lot of things that I do that kind of slightly, and it like when you compete at this level, like even the slight takeaway, like that makes a difference. He would just want me to kind of lift in this little box right here, right? But I'm always venturing off and doing other things because that's the only way I can maintain my interest in actually going to the gym. If I was only doing squat, bench, and deadlift on a consistent basis, I would be miserable. Not that I hate powerlifting, but I need that other stimulus, like in bodybuilding areas and hypertrophy work.
Yeah.
Like if it was just straight like singles and 3x3s and like things of that nature, I don't think I would last that long.
Yeah, it'd be too monotonous. Your buy-in, by having a larger buy-in, doing some of those different exercise variations, it makes going to the gym more enjoyable, and so you perform better. Yeah,
I'm willing to take whatever negative that comes from that for my powerlifting in order to enjoy going to the gym. So I know that if I don't incorporate those things, I just won't have fun. I won't maximize the powerlifting potential that I do have.
Bryce, I want to ask you now, because I think there is a theoretical, we're biased here, boys. We're talking to the 83 kg lifters, and it's fine to maximize on your muscular potential where, you're, let's say 5'6", 5'7", 5'9", and you're going to be lean and you're going to be jacked. When you want to start competing in the higher weight classes, you get up to 105, the six packs start disappearing, everybody. And so, Bryce, you recently have gained more body weight and your lifts are going up. And I don't know, you would have the better answer than me, that it seems like it's going to be successful when it comes to a Wilk standpoint, meaning that you're accumulating more body weight, what's the ratio between muscle and fat? Who knows? But it's not all lean muscle, and yet your Wilks is improving. So can you just walk us through that choice? Because I actually think people don't recognize that aspect of, let's say, the heavier weight classes that essentially, not using the Dave Tate weight moves weight, but there comes a certain time and place where you need to just increase your body weight and it will yield a positive return on your gym performance or your lifting performance.
Yeah. So I guess the decision for me was to try to be more competitive in equipped lifting and have a shot at making it to the World Games, because that's the sort of big overarching goal on my radar right now. And looking at the totals from the first year I competed at Worlds, and I believe in 2018 as well, my total at the 105 would have placed me higher in the 120s as it was. So going up a weight class was kind of a no-brainer at that point. If I go up a weight class and put 40 kilos on my total, in a bit of a less deep field, of course, turn around to 2019 and the exact opposite thing happened. Most of the 105s bombed, and I would have had a very real shot at world champion. And I went in amongst a field of, I think, 10 lifters, all totaling over 1,000 kilos in the 120s. But like for me, obviously Russ and I have very different physiques. I don't, I didn't start doing a lot of bodybuilding stuff. I still don't to this day. I think I feel psychologically kind of the opposite of Russ, where I don't need to do any of that kind of stuff. If I could just squat, bench, and deadlift all day, every session, I would be totally fine doing that. I have a blast doing it. And I think my physique is reflective of that. So, moving up a weight class for me was, I think, a way for me to put some more mass on my upper body, where it was very much needed to push my total forward. And like you were saying, I'm hitting all-time bench PRs every week right now, because I think I've finally, sort of gotten to that tipping point with my upper body, whether it's, and again, whether it's just gaining weight or whether we've really sort of struck on something in these last few blocks of training. It's tough to say, but I seem to be responding well to it. I'm getting back to, some of my best squatting, which really took a hit when I got my hip injury, and my deadlift hasn't really fallen off. I haven't been progressing at the same rate as maybe I was at a 105, but it feels okay still. I can see the shadow of an ab or two in the morning in the right light, so I'm okay. I'm doing all right. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, man. Yeah, so you're basically only 10 weeks out from your first show, is what I want to say.
Yeah, 10 weeks out at any point.
Yeah.
A shave and a tan. A shave and a tan.
Yeah, people underestimate the role of a tan. I just want to say that. I do want to ask Alan quickly, and then I have the closing question to ask. Alan, I've seen, my man, your transformation over the last year. And it makes me feel that behind every single strength athlete is actually a jacked human underneath it all, because we saw your 405 squat challenge, and I mean, we saw everything. And we saw the abs, we saw everything coming out, and so I think some people, from seeing you in person, I think one of the first things I said in 2016, I was like, man, like your quads, that's actually one of the first things Eric Helms said too. And he said, yeah, you got bodybuilding tier quads, man, like just the muscularity on them, that some people were, I wouldn't say surprised, but when you lean down, it's like, yeah, there's muscle there. There's a lot of muscle, actually. Like, it's not like, oh man, I was just doing, some squat, bench, and deadlift, and I built no muscle over time. Let me ask you this, in the context of your goals and you competing in everything that you do, and with your training, do you make it a specific point to try and include a requisite amount of volume or variation for aesthetics? Do you even care about that consideration? Or is it just like, man, this temple you see before you, that's just a product of me loving strongman, baby. Like, I never thought once in my head, do a bicep curl, get a bicep. It's like, that's all secondary. Like, how does it function in your head? Aesthetics.
I don't really, I mean, there's a little bit that plays into aesthetics, but a lot of it is just I'm going to do front raises and isolation shoulder work because I know that it's going to help my overhead press or something like that. So it is pretty much all performance based. And when I lost all that weight, there wasn't much change in training at all intentionally. It was just, I just wasn't eating nearly as much. And so I didn't make this shift of like, I'm going to pursue aesthetics and change my training and whatnot. Training stayed the same. I just ate less. And it really wasn't for any sort of aesthetic goal. I think that just kind of naturally came with it. It was honestly more of a lifestyle change. I was honestly sick and tired of eating so much food. for so long of trying to hold on to body weight, trying to be 250, 255 pounds and just eating. And I kind of said to myself, I'm not like, what am I doing this for? I'm not competing at the same level as Johnny, Russ, and Bryce. I'm not like trying to get this qualifying total or trying to take first at nationals. It was more just an image of like, I wanted to be big and strong. And I knew that I'm not going to do this for another 10 years of like eating thousands and thousands of calories every day. And so it was more like, it's going to have to change at some point. And I think I'll do it now. And it was at the same moment that I had my son. So I was making quite a few changes. But that was the whole point of it. It really wasn't out of aesthetics, aesthetic desire.
Let me just say that most individuals, they have a kid, they get the dad body, and Alan's like, I'm getting ripped. I actually think one of the things that you did a really good job of, man, was that I think not creating that emotional attachment where sometimes people set themselves up to failure, where it's like, I'm unhappy with how I look, now I want to get lean, and they create all this baggage with the journey that just makes it infinitely harder, whereas it's just a process of something else. Your aesthetics follows other considerations, and then as a byproduct, guess what? You end up looking awesome. And I think sometimes people get that twisted, the two. So that was awesome to see. And you said something, Alan, that leads now to the final question. So we'll jump to the final question because we got just a few minutes. It's time to get even more existential than Mike Teixeira's RP analogy. And that is, you said, in 10 years, like, am I going to be 255? No. Which is interesting, Alan. You think we're all going to survive this pandemic. I think that's very noble of you that there is 10. So I want to start with Mike. Let's talk about life after YouTube. And I'm not trying to get too deep here, but let's say for some people, it's maybe been a slight wake-up call in the fact that, this might not last forever, that we all have this opportunity and we're taking advantage of it. Like Russ just opened up Corrupted Strength. Where we're all trying to make a play here, and we've put, the best years of our life, our youths, into this, creating content and all these other things. But maybe, who knows? The world is dynamic, it's variable. 10 years from now, will we be doing this? Who knows? So let me ask you, Mike, first start off with you. Where do you see yourself, the content, or everything in 5-10 years? Like, what's kind of the future direction? Or if you couldn't do this, like, what's the plan, man? Let's just talk a little outside of lifting now for a second, and we'll go around the table. Close it out.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, Omar and I work together on the business end a lot, and I enjoy business. I enjoy creating and whatever that might be. And so if that's podcasts, if that's chatting with you, handsome gentlemen, if that's YouTube videos, if that's creating businesses or a product or a gym or whatever it is, I want to create the rest of my life. I was lucky enough and privileged enough to go to an art school my whole life. And so it's kind of just built into me to see things maybe a little bit different. Some people, and I think all of us here do, and that's kind of why we're in the space that we are. I'm not really good with a plan B. I'm not very organized. I don't have 5-year plan. I don't know what's for lunch. I don't know anything. I just kind of put my head down and try to go. This has added, I think, a lot of perspective to a lot of people. To not get too deep, I think I've just had a perspective on life that may be a little different too, just going through some things I did in my early 20s. So I don't ever take any of this for granted. My popularity isn't that popular on the internet, and it's taken 8 years to even get someone to watch my bullshit that I put out there. So like, I know how long it took to get here, and I know how quick it could be torn away. And so I don't know. I always say my plan B is like, my skill is coaching. I know a little bit about training. I think people don't hate me, so I could probably sell some shit or train some people at a gym if the world explodes on me on the internet. But I really don't know. As long as I'm around my friends, as long as I can text Omar and we can try to create something together, I'll probably be cool with it. So. No. Man, I have no idea. Yeah. I have no idea, to be honest.
Russ, let me ask you, man. You're in the process. Did the gym open, or was it in the process of opening, your gym?
I mean, it's kind of weird because this whole virus thing was, like, I guess you could say, convenient for me. If that makes sense. I feel like this is kind of giving us a little bit more time to like organize ourselves and develop a plan of attack. So for me, my answer kind of goes along with Mike, but I will say the one shining thing for me is the gym. I do have really, really big goals for the gym in terms of like unifying the powerlifting community in Houston. Like, I'm not scared to say that my main goal is to be the powerlifting gym in Houston. Like if you're a powerlifter and you kind of come down here and you come in this area, like there is no reason as to why you shouldn't stop by or have a membership at my gym. So I feel like the next from this point on in the next like 5 years, this is my main goal. Whether my YouTube shit just kind of falls off or like I fall off of social media, it's still going to be building the gym, because you can still build a gym without social media. So this is kind of like my project where I want this to live on, if possible, for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, man. Bryce?
I mean, we've kind of diversified and done some different things during this whole thing. We got a Discord community going. We've done some Twitch streaming and stuff like that. And honestly, we're just trying to continue to build the community in sort of whatever avenue that takes. So trying some different things out in that regard. And I think that the community is a big sort of pillar of what we're trying to do with Calgary Barbell, is just like get weights in people's hands, get them, excited about lifting, and get them a little bit educated so they can, continue to learn. And I guess the other big side of the thing is just doubling down on the time that we're spending coaching, like talking with our coaches, working as coaches. There's more time for a Skype call, more frequently than we otherwise would have, or than I otherwise would have with certain clients, developing and taking the extra time to talk through, what worked and what didn't work in a block, and really analyzing, a lot of those sort of variables, and trying to, I guess, spend more time thinking about coaching and programming development and athlete development. So yeah, I think that's taken up a lot of my focus, as well as it just, I don't know, enjoying taking the dog out, leaving my phone at home, and, doing some stuff like that to get away from it all. Cause I think it does get to a point where you kind of have to put a moratorium on, like, okay, we're not going to talk about this COVID thing for like 2 hours. We're going to find something else to talk about so that we can just like get out of that for a few minutes. Cause it's literally everywhere you look, right?
Bryce, I just want to say, man, if you're trying to diversify with the uptick in body weight, there's an OnlyFans account, I'm sure. I think there's multiple avenues, Big boy, thick boy, looking to build a community. Like, that's all you got to say. Alan, I know you got to go, my man, so I'll shoot it over to you.
12-year-old.
Yeah, that's its own community. That's what I'm saying. I'll kick it over to Alan because I know you got to go, man. Then I'll ask Johnny. What about you?
So I would say that, the couple of things that I do, I'm a gym owner first. And I think that this whole situation with coronavirus has made me thankful that I didn't just put all my pennies into one piggy bank. I do have other things that I can do. And I think that it's unfortunate. I know personally some other gym owners who are closing their gym or gyms, multiple, because, they put everything they had into this gym, and once gyms are taken away, they have nothing. And it's the same with, a YouTuber. What if the internet went away for a year? What if YouTube went away for a year? All your videos are gone. Do you have anything to kind of fall back on? And so, I try to just branch out as best I can. And I know that when we had the interview, you and I, Omar, the business interview at Mike's house in February,
yep.
One thing that I had mentioned was I admire the fact that you are able to capitalize, not take advantage of, but capitalize on this huge audience that you have. And that it's not just, hey, I'm in a rush to get 1 million YouTube subscribers and then I'll be happy, and then it's like, hey, YouTube's gone. Fuck, what do I have now? You actually, have Ouroboros, Iron podcast, Iron Culture podcast, to name a bunch of other things, Rascal Apparel. And you have, kind of rooted in other areas, multiple avenues. And I think that can make you, as you like to say, more robust in these types of situations. So anyways, in 10 years, I do think that I'm going to be running a gym until I'm 90 years old. So that's hopefully what I'm still doing.
Just imagine that, like 90 years old from it. No, I'm saying like the lifting YouTubers at that point, it would be like visiting one of the meccas. You know what I'm saying? Like, because we have, for us, we came up in this community now where I was just thinking it'd be wild. Like, what if we did a trip, let's say, the lot of us to West Side, just as an example. Like, how would that even go? Like, is it old guard versus new guard? Like, how would that even go down? Some of the old institutions of strength. So, like, you being part of the community, Alan, and kind of creating that space and setting the standard that then is, you know, much larger standard, and it's much more diverse. The people that live there, like, you know, strongman competitors, powerlifters. I wonder in 30 years when we're the old hats, like people stopping by, it's like, oh, wait a second, like, oh, Russ's gym, that's the gym to go to in Houston. You know, it's going to be interesting to see from a legacy standpoint. I want to ask Johnny, because Alan basically hit on it. I would say myself, Alan, and Johnny, probably in terms of the longest time spent on YouTube, where we're all used to the fact, like, Johnny, you actually, I'll give him credit. When he started his channel, he rose pretty quickly. It took me a while, and I had the 3-4 years. I had actually 4 years of basically deriving no income off of YouTube. And so for basically 40% of my entire YouTube career, I made no money. So I learned quickly not to depend on it. So it's almost by default. Whereas I think individuals these days, you could start a channel and inside of 2 years, you can be successful. So I did 4 years, like literally I had no YouTube ads on, of just earning $0 from YouTube, but still doing it. Like, so I think that just kind of developed that. I'm curious for you, Johnny, because you kind of come from a very similar era yourself now, where you see yourself in the future, all those things. You had a very poignant post, man, about you turning, was it 28, 29, and just reflecting on things?
28.
Yeah, you're like, hey, bro.
Don't take a year, right? Don't do that.
Don't do that to me, man.
Okay. By the way, I actually have a hilarious story about the Westside thing. Is I'm personally friends with someone who was invited to Westside. He was invited to Westside 3 weeks ago, in the middle of the coronavirus. Like literally, they invited him. He's like, "Hey man, in Ohio, is it cool?" I'm like, "It's not. It's getting quarantined. Like, don't do that." So Louis is just completely ignoring everything. And that guy's from Texas, so I'm like, that would be the worst time to make that drive.
Yeah.
But overall, I think it kind of connects to what Bryce was saying. I would say I'm probably a mix between Bryce and kind of Alan and Russ, where as far as online content, I think it's a tricky balance, because I online coaching, I would say for the next 5 years will definitely be my main focus. And I'd say coaching is, what I'm most passionate about. I really like the details of like, okay, how exactly do you do things? Do you progress a light day bi-weekly, or do you do this or whatever? And really getting the specifics. I would say in the longer term, though, in terms of 10 years, actually what my goal would be is to be a coach at a university club for powerlifting, and then doing online stuff on the side. I think that would be the best, because for me personally, I look at ownership of a gym and it looks stressful, to be honest. It's like, okay, that's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of overhead. So I admire it, but I also see like, okay, that you would have to like totally, really want to expand that, really make a name for it. Kind of like Russ said, like make it the gym in the city. It's actually pretty funny, because the gym I train at, if it survives, which I honestly don't know, I actually, like, the owners are my age or maybe a year younger. So I hope they're fine. What's funny is one of the people at the gym, they're actually associated with the University of Cincinnati as a option for their club. So they actually do like all go to university. And one of the people there was like, yeah, we considered, just getting a pool of money and then just giving it to you to coach us, like as a coach. And I was just thinking, like, that is a great idea. Do exactly that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think some sort of system like that, because I think the trickiest part with online content is you can get in this cycle where you see so many YouTubers who are unhappy, and you just have to ask yourself, like, is this enough of a community? Is this real enough from kind of from an emotional perspective, but then from just a physical? It's like, if you just don't touch and feel something in person, like, is it the same? And I think to some extent it's not. Like, to some extent it's unhealthy if it's like all your life. So I'd say that transition would be really the ideal world, because most people here have coached in person, right? Like everyone probably here has like done something in person, and there is something about that is it's different. And I would say it's more enjoyable if you can balance everything, but it's so hard to obviously balance. So I think it really, in a perfect world, it's like what you guys have all said, is that you're diversified enough to have the stability of being able to say, like, look, you know, coaching spots open, boom, you get 20 people if you absolutely needed it. And that would be, you know, that's great. And in person, that's not always guaranteed. But in person, I think is really the ideal, you know, satisfaction. You have your local tribe. I think to some extent that's necessary.
I only have one final question, and it's just to Johnny. When you're a university coach, shirt tucked in or not tucked in? There's only one clear answer. But...
I'll tell you. No, I would have shirt tucked in, have like the polo shirt, have like the logo on it, and just like walk around like all stiff, all just like shoulders.
Little whistle and a stopwatch.
Have khaki pants.
Oh yeah, that's look. You're like, yeah, you demonstrating squats, but you just getting underneath it, and you're just thinking, your students are thinking, like, I think this guy's gonna snap his shit up. Like, you're just like real stiff.
You know, the weirdest thing is actually when I started on YouTube, I really am probably one of the only people with this mentality. Is when I started YouTube, I always thought like the peak of what I'm trying to do will be like when I'm somewhat close to Ripato's age, because like I always wanted to be more of that. And then looking back, I'm like, why did I just assume that you have to feel like this old goat in the game?
30 year
There's something
career.
admirable about that. Like, you can't tell me Ripato's not a happy guy. Like, you could just look at that and you're just like, he knows his lane, he's established it, and there's something admirable about that.
Yeah. All I'll say on that is, I think you guys should read some of the fiction that he's written, because that's really where he derives the satisfaction. And I'll leave it at that. But I just want to thank everyone for joining another episode. I appreciate, gents, all your time. I'll make sure, of course, to link in the description all your channels, the social media. I implore everyone to check them out. And what can I say? It seems like we have 2 Canadians here and what do you call it? 4 Americans, that we will probably be doing this dance maybe a month from now, because I think a month from now, gyms are on the lower end, at least I could say here in Canada. So I will probably see you guys, if you're down, in another month for another edition. I appreciate everyone's time doing this once again, and make sure to follow their social media in the description. Eat your vegetables, eat your vegetables, eat your fucking vegetables.